The pitch is, wow. Right now, we have a lot of political division in this country. And man, those demon rats, they sure did do it. We need to bring down the temperature in the room stat if we want to make sure to keep our great president, Donald J. Trump, safe. Or some variation of that. And in an attempt to bring down the rhetoric to keep the brave and beautiful Donald J. Trump safe. So I'm just trying to be, I'm trying to heal the divides here. In order to do that, you need to stop calling him things like a threat to democracy. Because if you call someone like Donald Trump a threat to democracy and people believe it, then they might act upon it. And therefore, the last two attempts on Donald Trump's life are the fault of Democrats' fiery rhetoric around Donald Trump. And there's been a few people that have tried to get this message home. I'll just play JD Vance's, since that's like straight from the Trump campaign, so you can get the MAGA world perspective.
Before I do that, I want to just address the elephant in the room here, which is, of course, just a couple of days ago, my running mate, my dear friend and our next president, was nearly assassinated again. 2 assassination attempts in it.
Can we just say nearly, I think nearly is being a little bold there. He didn't have a clear line of sight of the president. He was outside the property. He was unable to get inside the property. Okay? I mean, if Donald Trump was nearly assassinated in that instance, then Nancy Pelosi was within a whisker of being hanged on J6, because they actually got into the building. Okay? I'm just nearly is a stretch, but yes, there was somebody trying to do that. Maybe, but then again, my perspective is kind of relative, because a close call is like, oh, a shell just fell within 30 feet of you, To them, a close call is, I guess, the guy in the parking lot. Whatever, continuing.
As many months, and I think that it's time to say to the Democrats, to the media, to everybody that has been attacking this man and trying to censor this man for going on 10 years, cut it out or you're going to get somebody killed.
Okay, they're trying to censor this man. They're going to get somebody killed. Here's another version of the same message, but now more focused on the idea of Trump being a threat to democracy, which seems to be the main point people are talking about, because I don't see people saying, how dare they criticize Trump for his tax cut plan. It's not usually. It's the idea that Donald Trump is anti-democratic, and to point that out is dangerous. Here is James O'Keefe from formerly Project Veritas, before, the great card collapse. The candidate is a threat to democracy. Violence has no place in America. Choose only one. Both cannot be true. Can I just say, on its face, this is stupid. This is stupid. This is moronic. This makes no sense. A candidate can't be a threat to democracy because democracies are made up of candidates. Okay, then Hitler wasn't a threat to democracy because Hitler was a political candidate in Germany. Lukashenko was not a threat to democracy in Belarus because at first he was a candidate for office before centralizing control around himself. This would mean anybody who has transferred a democracy into an authoritarian dictatorship would not have been a threat to democracy, because at the end of the day, they were still a candidate. Yes, a candidate can be a threat to democracy. It's dependent upon what that candidate wants to do with the democracy. If they want to end it, then yes, they're a threat to democracy. If somebody says, for example, hey, put me in office, then you don't have to vote again, and then I can be dictator, that some person would be a threat to democracy, because they're clearly stating their intentions to destroy democracy. So the idea that, oh, they're a candidate and democracy is made up, it can't be, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. People have destroyed systems from within the system before. I mean, that's like the whole pitch of Trump, wasn't it? Trump was a Molotov cocktail that you throw into the system to burn it down and rebuild it again. He's going to smash up this establishment. He's going to drain the swamp. Anyway, I don't buy this. Not only on the front that, yes, a candidate can obviously be a threat to democracy, but Donald Trump keeps going out and just doubling down on his anti-democratic tendencies. If Donald Trump 4 years ago did J6, right? And when I say did J6, right, let me be more clear so people aren't confused. Went forward with his team to do the fake electors plot, which was getting people. Oh, what? We've got air raid sirens in the back. So let's go back to just J6 for a moment, okay? Let's just say that the last 4 years of what Donald Trump has said didn't happen, and we just go back to J6. You have the fake electors plot, where Donald Trump got this scheme with his team to get people to fraudulently tell the government, to try to tell state, local, and federal election officials that actually the real electoral votes, the real people who are going to go and vote on behalf of the people after, Biden won the election, they're not the real representatives. We're the real electors, even though they had no legal claim to it. They just filled out documents fraudulently claiming to be the real electors. And that came with legal repercussions, by the way. So Trump actually sold a lot of people upriver for that. And that's just one part of it. That was just one part of the scheme. That was supposed to be the basis to cause enough confusion so that Mike Pence could then send the campaign, send the election back down to the states, which is majority controlled by Republican legislatures. And then Donald Trump, even though he had lost the election, might have a chance of staying in power. And they were trying to delay the certification process to make this possible. And when the people were storming the Capitol building on J6, what Donald Trump was doing for like 3 or 4 hours before he finally said go home once all the violence was over and the vote was already extended. I mean, the vote was already delayed. The certification process was already delayed. The whole time while that violence was going on, he was calling people still. Well, not he was having Rudy, his staff, call people on Capitol Hill and asking them to delay the certification, send it back down to the states. So while the Capitol was being attacked, instead of calling off the violence, he waited, added more pressure to the Capitol officials, and then once the violence started to die down, he called it off, and then law and order started to come back under control. And then, of course, there's the intimidation of the Secretary of State of Georgia before any of the fake electors plot was schemed up or pushed, which was him just telling the Secretary of State to find the exact number of votes that they were down in the state of Georgia to win. And when they said, no, sir, we don't want to do that because, we don't have evidence of widespread election fraud of the exact amount that would make you the winner in Georgia, he then tried to threaten legal repercussions to them. This is not even talking about Donald Trump before J6 on the campaign trail saying that if he loses, it is rigged. There is no scenario where he accepts the result of the election if he loses. And there's no way that a two-party system can work if one of the major parties never accepts defeat. Then it's not democracy, it's only democracy when you win. So even if we just isolate just the period around 2020, and we don't talk about the anti-democratic tendencies he showed in 2016, we don't talk about the lies he said about the illegals making him lose the popular vote in 2016, we don't talk about all the statements he's made since then, I think that you could make a case that Donald Trump, through his actions at that time, has disqualified himself from public office, because holding the public office of the most powerful democracy on the planet while being anti-democratic is not healthy. It's not good for the system. But we don't just have to look at what happened around January 6th. We can also look at the last 4 years, which I think makes the case only stronger. And I will say, I'm not going to buy your crocodile tears around the rhetoric in this country, not only because Donald Trump was mocking Paul Pelosi after Nancy Pelosi's husband had his head bashed in with a hammer in his own home, not only all the other disgusting things that Donald Trump has said towards his political opponents or the suggestions towards violence, but here's just Joe Biden. If calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy is inciting violence, then is this not exciting violence? Joe Biden is a threat to democracy and a threat to the survival and existence of our country itself. That means if Joe Biden's the president,
is an immoral, morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
Thank you so much for the sub format for the primer. That means if Joe Biden won re-election, then not only would democracy end, not only is he a threat to democracy, he's also a threat to the basic survival of America. Even though I think once American democracy dies, you've kind of basically become brain dead, because what makes America America has kind of been shot down in that instance. But still, not only do you lose democracy, you lose the entire country itself. And more sirens. I think that might be the end of the alert. Here is another statement from Donald Trump saying basically the exact same thing in speech format. If you're just thinking, well, he was, he wouldn't want to be hypocritical. I don't know why you think that. He wouldn't want to be hypocritical. He would only say that on the shitter at 2 a.m., when Joe Biden was running. Here is an example of him saying this not that long ago on the campaign trail in April.
Save Wisconsin, and before, a vote for Trump is a vote to save Wisconsin, and it's a vote to save your country. This country is finished if we don't win this election. And I heard somebody say it, a scholar say it 2-3 days ago, said, if we don't win, this may be the last election our country ever has. And there could be truth to it. That's where we're going. Because Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. He's the threat to democracy. Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, if you're chanting 4 more years at a 2024 election race rally, what you're saying is Joe Biden should be reelected. I don't want to be the person to pop that bubble, but 4 more years usually implies the person in power should stay in office 4 more years. I do want to throw that out there. Anyway, there's just a complete hypocrisy on this. I also do want to throw out there that it's not just, when you talk about democracy, it's not as simple as, okay, you've ended the election system or you've rigged the election system. Because democracy can be represented in different forms. For example, freedom of expression, I think, is pretty fundamental for a democracy. Freedom of the press is also a liberty that's very important for democracy. And after Donald Trump's recent terrible debate performance, where the majority of Americans and every poll, including Trafalgar, so the right-wing pollsters, say that Kamala did well, that Harris, beat Donald Trump. I mean, it's kind of hard to say when you talk about somebody won, quote unquote, but she won in the sense that people talk about winning, as in she performed better than Trump and was able to convince more people she was probably a better option than he convinced people that night. After that performance, where he talked about the eating of the cats and he had the concepts of a healthcare plan, Trump reacted to it by saying he won. But after saying he won, he then said that ABC had to have their broadcast license revoked. So I don't usually it's hard to determine if somebody really thinks or don't think they won a debate or did well in a conversation, because from your perspective, you might think that your points were the best points ever and the positions that you have are kind of infallible and you're right because you're you. So it's hard to always know if somebody really think they didn't do well. But if Trump is threatening the broadcasting license, the ability for ABC to operate freely and unhindered as a news organization, then not only am I questioning his dedication to freedom of the press as somebody who's constantly railed against the press, obviously, but on the other hand, I also question whether even Trump thinks he won that debate. I mean, after the debate, he was taking out Twitter polls that had him winning 94% to say, hey, look, I won the debate. It was already pretty pathetic, but this was worse. I think we have a few more we could go through quickly. The failing New York Times is a true threat to democracy, another group that he thinks is a threat to democracy. If you go after me, I'm coming after you is the type of rhetoric he's been using quite a lot. And he's been very open about the fact that if he wins re-election, he's going to go after the liars and the cheaters and the whoever's, and he's going to try to put them behind bars, and he's going to prosecute them. And he never clearly defines who exactly that is, but then you see him reposting images of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and others behind bars on Truth Social, and reposting images like of Joe Biden hogtied in the back of a truck. And so you think, okay, so you're just going to go against all of your political opponents because you tried to, hoard state secrets they didn't have access to after and store it and hide it from the National Archives. And because you hid it and you would not return it, you had your house raided. And so now everybody else has to pay. Everybody else has to pay for your own inability to follow the law. Mind you, this is from 2024. This is very recent. This is very recent. And again, when he talks about if you're coming after me, I'm coming after you, I mean, he's pretty open about this theme. Donald Trump posted one of these word collections. I don't know if you've seen these before, but it's word association. You have a person, in this instance, Donald Trump, as is the word at the top, and then you have all the words you associate with it. And Donald Trump seemed to be very proud of this word association, which had the biggest words being revenge, power, dictatorship, and then the economy. Well, it's good to know that that's up there. Fantastic. By the way, they have dictatorship and then dictator. So they've got dictator twice. It just has different versions. Fantastic. Corruption. Oh, that's great. I don't know why you'd be particularly proud of that being a word association with Donald Trump, but okay. He seems, again, when he says, like, when he talks about strong men and he thinks, I don't know if, and he compliments them and he talks about them and talks about their, you know, how they like him. It's hard to know if he's just saying like, oh, I think it's good because they're strong men, or if he thinks that's why they're good, or if he understands that this is the type of stuff strong men are known for, and it's not good. It's not good for running the state. It's extremely biased. It's authoritarian. Posts like this make me think that, okay, I think at least he does understand that. Oh, here's one last one, okay? So you can get a good paragraph posting just from today. So if you think that this is like, oh, Dylan, you're just cherry picking. This is literally from, like, I don't know, what, 8 hours ago? Cease and desist. Together with many attorneys and legal scholars. And by the way, I love it when he cited that scholar earlier. One scholar said that if I don't win, America dies. Oh, wow. He must have read all the books. Sorry. Together with my many attorneys and legal scholars, I'm watching the sanctity of the 2024 presidential election very closely because I know, better than most, the rampant cheating and skullduggery. If you guys didn't realize that Donald Trump was the oldest candidate for president, oldest presidential nominee in history at 78 years of age, since Joe Biden technically was not nominated the second time around, here's the reminder: skullduggery that has taken place by the Democrats in the 2020 presidential election. It was a disgrace to our nation. Why did he capitalize this? I don't even want to think. Therefore, the 2024 election, where votes have just started being, again, why the have just started being cast, will be under the closest professional scrutiny. And when I win, so it's not a question of when, if you'll win, or, and I mean, like, candidates talk like this, like, I'm gonna win, we're gonna win, etc. Candidates talk about that like that a lot. But Donald Trump also has a track record of saying things like, if I lose, it's rigged. So I think when he says when I win, he really means it as there's no other option. Those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences so that this depravity of justice does not happen again. So long-term prison sentences. And who will this be for? I don't know. Donald Trump said lock her up to Hillary. He's, reposting images of a lot of his biggest political opponents being put behind bars. Who would he go after? I mean, if he's a populist and he's going to go after who his base would want him to go after, it's not going to be some random state election official in Minnesota. It's going to be the big names. We cannot let our country further devolve into a third world nation, and we won't. Please beware that, by the way, I would say on average, nations that are less politically developed are the ones that arrest their political opponents and say that I will crush the enemy, they're usually the ones that are doing that, but okay. Please be aware that this legal exposure to lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, and corrupt election officials, those involved in unscrupulous behavior will be sought out, caught, and prosecuted at levels, unfortunately, never seen before in our country. So he says he's going to hunt him down, he's going to prosecute him, and he's going to put him in prison, and it's going to be such prosecution, it's going to be at levels never before seen in our country. Mind you, we shut down pro-Confederate press and did arrest Confederate sympathizers during the Civil War. So to say that, even though I don't think Donald Trump thought that through that much, would say that is quite a lot, considering we're also not a country at war, at least in the traditional sense. Anyway, I think from Donald Trump's own rhetoric, from his own behavior around January 6th, that to say that we can't call him a threat to democracy is to say that the truth is too dangerous to acknowledge. And I refuse to do that. He's not wearing eyeliner, it's a tattoo. That'd be better. That'd be so much better.